My name is Sarah Asper-Smith. I am an exhibit designer. I have a little business called Exhibit AK, and I develop and design exhibits for museums and cultural centers around the state. And I've also written a few children's books. Growing up in Juneau has inspired me because we are surrounded by beautiful wilderness, and there are stories everywhere, and most of my books are about animals. So my first book is called Have You Ever Seen a Smack of Jellyfish? And it's an alphabet of collective nouns for animals, like an army of ants, a flutter of butterflies, a murder of crows. And I came up with that idea. I was alone in my cabin reading a book, and it was just a novel, and the phrase "a business of ferrets" jumped out at me, and I thought, oh, okay, that would be a great kids book. Well, I created the Smack of Jellyfish book, I don't remember, 2008 or something like that. And then I went off to grad school because I had started doing museum exhibit design in Juneau and loved it, and thought, okay, I need to get good at this, and I need to do this for real.
Well, I was working on a book when Sarah called, and we discussed it, not at length, but enough to get excited. And then it was about every 6 months or so, I would hear from her again, because it was just so much involved in pulling this together. Once it really happened, it just took off.
I don't remember where I came up with the idea for illustrating Alaska, but it is obviously a natural fit for me because I do know the book publishing world a little bit, and I also am an exhibit designer, and I know some fantastic local artists. And so I got in touch with the Alaska State Museum and Jackie Manning and asked them what they thought of this idea, and they were into it. And I was able to rope in some illustrators that I know, and we're very fortunate in Southeast Alaska to have so many talented artists, and probably, like, per capita, a really large number of children's book illustrators. This exhibit has been a true collaboration, which is also like making a kid's book. There are a lot of people involved, and Jackie Manning and Aaron Elmore at the State Museum were fantastic, and the 4 different artists have been so generous with their time. It's just been lovely. There are a few different themes that run through the exhibit. One is the Alaska connection, because these are all artists from Alaska. And one thing I asked them was, do you get tired of drawing the same thing over and over again? So this shows different bears in all of the styles of the artists here. While I was in grad school, I was working on a thesis about having conversations in museums and connecting Alaskan communities through exhibits. And so when I came back, I was really called back to Juneau because I thought I need to help Alaskans tell their own stories. Here's a series from Jim from I'll See You When the Moon Is Full, and you can see how he started with the different positions and changed little things with sketch paper before he got to where he wanted with the final placement of the illustration. In the museum world, most of our museums are very small. People are stretched very thin, and when they want to do an exhibit, they usually look outside. So they're going to hire a firm from Washington or California or wherever, and then they're going to spend half of the time explaining what it means to be an Alaskan to this company. I wanted to help with that because I can start at this base level and listen, which is what I do as an exhibit designer, is listen to people, tell their stories, and help them share them. There are 4 different illustrators that were featured, and we really focused on process. So as you walk into the exhibit, there are cover designs by each of the different artists. This is Yvonne Zerbetz. She is a lino-cut artist, but you can see that she starts with these teeny tiny thumbnails to get everything just right, and then moves up to this larger sketch before she ends up actually carving out of a linoleum block and then printing and coloring. I like that you can see she has a couple of different owl faces here that she was trying. She uses lots of tracing paper when she maybe wanted to try a different thing. and she roughed in the text here. This one is Benny's Flag, illustrated by Jim Fowler, and you can see that he started with a very rough sketch before he made this beautiful acrylic painting, and then the final on the cover. Michaela Goad illustrated Salmon Boy, and this is her sketch, and you can see it even has a coffee stain on it, because that's another part of this exhibit, is to show that these are not precious, these sketches. You got to do a lot of them to come up with what you want to share. Then she does a watercolor, and then you can see in between this stage and this stage the final details that she does on the computer. You Are Home With Me. Mitch Watley is the illustrator on this one, and you can see all of the different foxes that he tried before he got the right look, and the foreground here. And then you can see that he combined all these pieces into the composition on the computer and then digitally colored to get the final. You'll notice that all of the art is hung slightly lower because I wanted this to be an exhibit for kids. And usually your ADA standard is 58 or 60 inches, so eye level for tall people. But we have desks that are shorter and we have art that's lower, and so I wanted kids to feel welcome, like this was for them. Because mostly when you come into a museum, it doesn't feel like it's for kids. So this is the beginning of the exhibit, and I wanted people to realize that it's a job. And Michaela says, well, it can seem like magic. It's a job with many steps. And there's a picture here of Yvonne's many steps that she has for her 32 different pages, and she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things that she has to do to check off before each piece is done. So when you walk into the exhibit, you come into the text area, and along with the exhibit, each kid gets a packet, an activity, so that they can do it along with the illustrators, and they're going to get their assignment, which is a piece of text. And they're going to brainstorm and think of all of the different ways that they could share this visually. And the next step is sketches. So I wanted them to try out a bunch of different ways that they could create this scene. And then they're going to pick one and finalize it, do their very best drawing. And then the final stage is the book. So they're going to put it in a book, and we're going to have an illustrated story done by all the kids that visit the exhibit. One panel is about collaboration, because there is, like with an exhibit, creating a book is all about different people helping to create this one beautiful thing. And it doesn't usually happen this way, but 2 of the artists in this exhibit are married to the writers, Jim Fowler and my husband, Mitch. And this illustration is a picture from When Joel Comes Home that Susie wrote, and Jim drew this elephant that is as old as Susie is. I roped in Jim Fowler and Yvonne Zerbetz and my husband Mitch Watley and Michaela Goad. All 4 artists have very different styles. Michaela is a watercolorist, Jim usually does acrylics, Yvonne does lino cuts, so everything she carves has to be backwards. Mitch does pencil drawings, but then he finishes it on the computer with the color. But the thing that I noticed about their process was how similar it was. Everybody starts with lots of different sketches, thumbnail sketches, and then they create a little more refined sketch before they go into their final illustration. This is Michaela Goad's studio that she drew for us. As I said, she mostly works in watercolors, but she also does final touches in the computer. And it's fun to look at the difference between, say, this watercolor from Salmon Boy to over here, where you can see that she added the scale details and the branches around the sides. We had to add this graphic when Michaela won the Caldecott, because we were so proud of her. The Caldecott Medal is a very prestigious honor that is given out once a year for fantastic children's book illustration. And while we were in the middle of putting up this exhibit, Michaela Goad won for her book, We Are Water Protectors, which is an amazing achievement, and she's going places. I love this. She made a color story for Raven and the Tide Lady so that she could see how the colors would flow from one page to the other. So it was a different way of doing thumbnails. She also does sketches too, but this one was just about color. When people find out that I have written children's books, they are pretty excited because a lot of people want to write children's books. So I thought that this would be a good way to show people how it's done and how it's not as easy as you think it is. In this area, the kids are going to draw a whole bunch of ideas for their text that they're illustrating. And all of these artists make lots and lots of sketches before they focus on a final, and they're really rough. You know, they don't usually look like much. Here's an example of Yvonne's thumbnails for Little Red Snapperhood. Yvonne, when I went to her studio, she showed me a big mason jar full of pencil stubs that are this big, just to remind herself that this is a lot of work. So this is, again, we're still on Little Red Snapperhood. So you saw all of the teeny little thumbnails. So then one of those made it into this larger piece, and there are, she uses trace paper a lot to change little things, and then she thought about where the text was going to go. And then it's time to bring it into the linoleum block cut, which she has to carve backwards because it's a print. So she does that, flips it over with the print, and then colors the final.
Everybody can write, but not everybody can draw. I try to be true to the source, the resource, and the research part of it is fun, but sometimes it's really frustrating. This is I'll See You When the Moon is Full, from this, and there was a lot of, it was kind of a difficult book to work on because there was not a lot of action. So I finally just gave up. I remember it was late at night, and I couldn't come up with anything, and I went upstairs and was doing the dishes. And it was in the winter, so they were just dripping with condensation. And then that gave me the idea of using the hand to draw, and that it was much more, I was just very delighted by this solution. It was just one good thing that comes from doing your dishes, or not doing your dishes. When I first began working on a book, for days, I'll just read it over and over and over. And eventually I fill up the margins on the manuscript with just ideas, not necessarily any coherence. But so at the end of it, I have a really good rough idea of what the book is looking like, and it just kind of keeps building. When I look at it again, all I can see is what's wrong for days, and then actually, and at a certain point, there's a twist, and then, oh no, that worked pretty well. Kind of universally hard thing is for kids to do something over. It seems like once they've done it, it's done. This is a book that I illustrated that it's always bugged me. One little thing has bugged me. It's really not wrong, but it just has bugged me. This on the crane and the ground squirrel. And with this one, see the ground squirrel is hanging down, just straight down, like he's not moving. Use a piece of tracing paper and draw the portion, and draw the portions that you like. But then so that you don't have to just redraw it every time. And it's actually kind of fun to do that. And it didn't take very much to completely change that. To date, I've illustrated 15 books, and one of the early books I worked on was a New York Times story about a guy who was diving with dolphins, and he freed a young dolphin who was tangled up in some line. And I was struggling to find resource material. I was using my bath to show me what refracted light looked like. So I was taking a lot more baths at that time. And I went over to a little pet store, local pet store, to get something. And while I was talking to the woman, I don't know if you remember a TV show called Flipper. She was a trainer for Flipper in Juneau. And so she was my counselor for the rest of the book.
There were several themes to the exhibit. One is this is a messy process, this is a difficult process, and this is a fun process. So the idea was that the kids were then going to put their illustration in the book to create this complete piece. But due to COVID, we changed that a little bit, and so they're going to turn in their artwork to me, and then I'm going to scan it and create this PDF that they can get online, and so everyone gets a copy. So I want people to see this is something that I could do. I hope that there are some little artists who are inspired to create their own books someday.
I was at Costco yesterday, and I had at least 2 people come up and say what they felt, how their experience coming through. And one was a woman with her granddaughter, and she was just delighted. And another woman had lost a partner recently, and so one of our books lightly draws on that experience, not her experience, but just the lose of loss. And she was just saying how she felt.
When I'm writing a book, I'm not necessarily writing for kids, because I think if you write something good, then adults are going to want to read it too. And I feel the same way about this exhibit. It's directed at kids, but there's a lot that adults are going to get out of it, especially adults who are interested in art or the process or writing. It's a great experience for families to come in and share this bonding experience with parent and child. They can work on the project together. And I do think that the next time that they read a book, they'll be more thoughtful about what went into that. So after this exhibit leaves the State Museum, it's going to travel. And I'm hoping that in each community, the local museums will reach out to their local illustrators for programming and activities for kids, because there are so many fantastic artists in Alaska. I focused on Southeast because I knew these people and I knew that we had some great talent here, but I also know a lot of great illustrators across the state. And I think that it was wonderful to highlight them, and I think this exhibit should maybe go outside too, because I would love to showcase our talent. And I think it's a lovely exhibit that kids will enjoy from all over. I'm just very proud of the artists that we have in our communities.